This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at Wednesday morning. It's March 6th, and we got another day off here. Wolves played the Blazers on Monday night. Don't play again until Thursday night in Indiana. So Kyle Tigey and I are going to hit on a few things that we've kind of had like in our back pocket of we'll talk about them when there isn't an immediate game to get to some ownership talk. I want to hit on some of that. There's been news burbling around there. Can kind of give my perspective understanding of what's going on with all of that. That is kind of coming to a head as the season does as well. We'll maybe look ahead to Indiana and Cleveland a little bit, Kyle. And then the two of us did a bold predictions episode before the season that we thought would be fun to sort of look back at and see how right or wrong we were. Kyle, what's up?
How's it going, man?
Good. I still need to pack my suitcase after this episode. I'm going to Indiana today for the Pacers game, and then Cleveland on Friday, which I'm excited for two good games, two real opponents. And on the road is always interesting too. So that's where my head is at, is like, all right, this show, airport, get there. How are you?
Good. Yeah. I mean, they just got through that 7-game homestand, which we were talking about even back when you were out in Portland, right? Because it was the last 2 Portland games and then an All-Star break. And then I guess that chapter of what is a really long season. I was thinking about this last night. It's like, we're 75% through the season, basically, with the Wolves having 20 games left. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are in first place in the West. Like, that's just like, there's a lot of things we can talk about and issues, but it's just still kind of crazy to think about that. But yeah, so they have this 7-game homestand. They have like 3 weeks since that final Portland game that some players were just at home. Like Monty Morris hasn't left Minneapolis in like 3 weeks. But now they go on this 5-game road trip. 6-game road trip. Yeah, 2 games in Utah. But it's kind of their final big road test. And I can't stop thinking about what Finch was saying in Portland that week to us about how he kind of looks forward to road games over home games.
I thought about that too.
And this has been well documented. You've talked about it plenty on here, but with all the stuff off the court that a lot of these guys have had going on, some really sad, some really exciting. Half the team is, having baby fever. It might just be interesting to see them go on the road where a lot of those distractions are kind of maybe secondary. Sure. It's a lot different when you're at home. So it's a real test because not only did you say some real games, but every one of those teams is either a playoff team or feisty. Like, I don't know how many Jazz games you've watched lately, but they've kind of embraced the youth movement. And they're feisty, and they're both in Utah. So these next 6 games are going to tell you a lot. They're going to affect the seedings a lot, and then it's going to be kind of a sprint over that, not even final lap of, 4 laps make a mile on a track, but it's going to be that last couple 100 yards to see how serious they take the seeding. So big test coming up over the next week and a half.
And just quickly before we get into the long shots, today's show is, as we mentioned up the top, brought to you by Prize Picks. You can go to prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code DANE for a $100 sign-up bonus. There's a handful of games tonight. Clippers, Rockets. You might be watching for seeding purposes. The Thunder play the Blazers. I don't know if they'll be able to lose that. Bucks, Warriors, Kings, Lakers. If you are watching the games, take a look at what Prize Picks spread is today. It's always a fun thing to do, sort of on the side when you're watching the NBA or anything else. Again, prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app, promo code DANE for a $100 sign-up bonus. All right, Kyle, let's start by revisiting our Cam labeled it hot takes here from the preseason. I think we coined it bold predictions going into the season, which was like things. I don't know how I was trying to think about how I thought about this, right? Like things that are less likely than not to happen, or less likely to happen, under 50%, right? But maybe we think the perception is it's a 10% chance, and we think it was a 25% chance that this would happen. I mean, one of yours, I'm just looking at your top one was, first one on this list was Kyle Anderson will be traded, right? You wouldn't have
close
bet the mortgage on it, right? But you were like, I could see this happening over the course of the season there. So I don't know, maybe we just kind of like go back and forth on, they're up on the screen here. We'll read them out for people listening via podcast, but just kind of go back and forth of how these have fared, and actually kind of make some interesting conversation. I think so too. So which one of yours do you want to start with?
Let's just start, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks again for subscribing. Let's just start with kind of the grid. So your first hot take / preseason bold prediction was that Rudy and Naz, who were not awesome together last season, would be awesome together this season. Mm-hmm. And a quick take from you would be that hit, like that has been the case.
Yeah, we'll get to my other two that missed terribly, but this one did. The idea behind it, to hit on it, I didn't go back to listen, but I'm sure I said this, was last season. I looked it up again this morning. Naz and Rudy played 199 minutes together last season. There's 53 different pairings of, guys on the Wolves that played 199 minutes or more together. And Naz and Rudy had the worst numbers, minus 12.7 net rating. And this season, Naz and Rudy have played 640 minutes there, which I think is just as important as the net rating number, which is plus 14. 0.0. The only other better two-man pairings to have played 200 plus minutes together this season are Ant and Naz together at plus 15.5 and 819 minutes. And I will Venmo you $100 if you can get what the best two-man. I'll do it right now. If you could answer with the best two-man pairing, it's not Rudy and Naz. The best two-man pairing the Wolves have had this season to play over 200 minutes. What do you think it is? Weird.
Rudy and Nikhil?
Okay, a little more creative.
Oh, God.
Half right. You're never going to get it. You're never going to get it.
Nikhil and Kyle?
Rudy Gobert and Troy Brown Jr.
Oh, my God. R.I.P.
I was just looking at that because I remembered the Naz and Rudy one was the best. And I looked him up this morning. Rudy and Troy Brown Jr. was plus 17.1. Ant and Naz are plus 15.5. And then the Naz and Rudy lineup is plus 14.0 again in 640 minutes. And I think just kind of looking at that, what stands out to me is and I think what I said in the bold predictions thing at the beginning of the year was I thought the Rudy and Naz pairing needed longer stints together at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They would play for a minute, literally a minute and a half or 2 minutes there. And there's never any sort of I felt rhythm that they got to in any of those 199 minutes last season. I didn't think it would be this good because I did not think that the Rudy and Naz lineup defensively could be as good as it is. That's a primary factor. But I think the fact that, in 60 games thus far this season, they've played 640 minutes together shows that they're playing extended 6, 7, 8 minute periods of time together. They know they're going to get on the floor together every single night. They've got comfortable with each other. And that's just it's been a major win for this season. And I guess a major win for my bold predictions.
It's also not, and we don't want to do this today, right? I know the Wolves are kind of in a little bit of a sludge again. Yeah, they beat the Blazers, but dropped two pretty winnable games over the weekend and all the late game stuff, and you've talked about it all week, and we'll continue to talk about it over these final 20 games. But I think this one is a good one to start with because it's just more, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's more of something you'd put in your pocket for this summer if, this team does flame out way earlier than maybe expected in the playoffs, and you're trying to look at, what do they do next, right? Now that you could have a front court of, and again, Naz, you've kind of said as a wing, which I agree, but you could have a Naz Rudy, front court if you do have to make financial decisions. And it seems to be now that the sample size is large enough that it works.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the maybe shinier way to say it is Rudy works with both Cat and Naz, and so
that's a great way to put it. Actually,
so you could go. There's confidence in being able to go both of those directions, whether that be on a micro scale this season, game to game, or big picture into the future. That was one of the biggest questions of the whole Gobert thing was, can he work with another center? And to both Cat and Naz's credit, and Naz even more than Cat, they've evolved away from being centers because that's, not what their role is on this team. So that's what I really take from this, and just kind of broadly the past year and a half is Rudy can work in a double big look. It's worked in pockets of last season for sure, with him and Cat, and then it's worked pretty consistently over the course of this this season as well. So yeah, it opens up possibilities, ideas. It's encouraging. I think the defensive rating again is like 96 with Gobert and Naz Reid on the floor together. That's definitely very encouraging. Which one of yours was most right? Oh, you got one of them completely right.
Well, actually, I was cooking a little bit in October, but can I? Are we gonna do any regular season or like remaining season bold predictions? Are you going to give hot takes, or do you want me to just throw them out now? Because I had one related to Naz.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
I think Naz Reid could be the most, not valuable. I think Naz Reid could end up becoming the most important player in a first round playoff series. Because I just think if the Karl stuff continues, I mean, again, give him a longer leash come playoff time. But if there continues to be those mistakes and those late game execution stuff or foul trouble, like we saw the other night, even against, I think it was Portland, right? When he just like 3 quick fouls, 4 quick fouls. If Naz Reid can come in and just supplement everything Karl can do and keep that bar really high, he didn't play in last year's playoff series. I think Naz Reid would be the guy that, like, you're still going to need Ant, obviously. You're still going to need the Mike and Rudy combo. You're going to need Rudy on defense. But I think Naz Reid, if you told me in June, hey, Naz Reid had an amazing first-round playoff series, I would be like, oh, so they won it. That's kind of my take.
No. I definitely see that. And I think just like rotationally, they've been doing some things to really empower that more and more. I mean, Naz, when he checks in, unless he's just like playing awful or gets in foul trouble, he plays for like 12 straight minutes. Kind of checks in middle of the first, checks out, middle of the second, and you'll kind of see him in that time, play with Rudy, or play with just Cat, and he kind of gets to touch all of that. And I think that's been their way of looking at some of this stuff, of like ways in which to use him, because he's I don't know, however we define six man, in ways Kyle Anderson's that, ways Nickeil Alexander-Walker's that, but he's the six man with juice, right? Mm-hmm. That could, win you a quarter in a playoff game, maybe even win you a game there. So I'm with that 100%. And again, like, even better than the Naz and Rudy minutes this year have been the Ant and Naz minutes. And I wouldn't hate to see more rotational tweaks to kind of get more of that to happen. I think if and when you do separate Ant and Cat, it's really about kind of empowering that stagger, right? Putting Naz below Ant there. What are you going to in the Cat, no Ant minutes there? Like, I think they're finding and exploring with those things, and Naz has kind of been an answer for both of those there. So I agree with that one.
Naz Reid is shooting 41% on almost 5 attempts from 3.
Yeah.
He's literally he was undrafted. He's kind of out of shape. He was a backup center brought in on a very cheap contract, and now he's become one of the better stretch fours in the entire league, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he is as physical as Apollo. Like, he can put the ball on the deck. It's just impressive. And I think, again, looking forward to a playoff series, if someone in the starting lineup just doesn't work, back to the six-man thing, he's always the guy I would first think of bringing off the bench over Kyle, even if you need more playmaking, or over Nickeil if you need more defense. It's just bring in Naz, because I think when Naz is out there, he epitomizes what Finch wants to do on offense. Quick thinking, moves the ball. So, shout out Naz Reid. Let me give you one of mine. So, my first one was simply, and we don't have to go too long on this, but I think it's timely, was Kyle Anderson was going to be traded before the deadline. Mm-hmm. I think there were probably conversations. I mean, I think there was enough rumors that you could kind of see. Finch admitted this, back in Portland, that Kyle has seemed more free and just playing better basketball since the trade deadline. Maybe, I know you talked about this yesterday with Jace, just the concept of, if you're Kyle, were you concerned about getting traded and then being a buyout candidate, and all of a sudden, like, you might not have a job or a team or whatever. He hasn't had a great year. He's been much better since the trade deadline, but I just thought it made sense because he is not a guy, I don't think, even after the Mike Conley extension, that you were going to re-sign this summer just because of all the second apron cap stuff. So I was wrong. He did not get traded. He's going to be an integral part of this bench and this likely 8.5-man rotation come playoff time. The half being, I guess, Monty Morris. But it was just something to think about because, again, as much as I just want to embrace this team and this record and in this playoff run, this offseason is going to be as exciting, if not more exciting, for how this team does things. And I thought maybe moving Kyle before the deadline to try to get something back would have made sense, but they didn't. He's here, and he's playing better basketball.
He's playing way better basketball. I mean, I said this yesterday, but only rotation player pre-deadline that had a worse offensive rating, meaning the team's offense functioned at its lowest level. The only one that was worse than Kyle Anderson was Shake Milton. And post-deadline, which granted has only been like, I think 9 games that Anderson has played in, he has the best offensive rating since the deadline, and overall a net rating of plus 20. They've been killing it in a good way in the Kyle Anderson minutes. And that's, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's even a bold prediction anymore to bet that continues, but it just Kyle Anderson right now to me looks a lot like the Kyle Anderson of last season, and the numbers kind of bear that out.
So if he's been hooping since the trade deadline, and the trade deadline is when you acquired Monty Morris,
yeah,
do you think that like any percentage of Kyle's improved play is tied directly to Monty Morris in this scheme of you're not putting Kyle as like this quintessential backup point guard? Now he's more of like a playmaking wing, like, I don't know, the Draymond Greens, Kirilenko's of the world. Because those two have correlated, right? Like it's either he just seems more free because he knows he's not getting moved and that's why he's playing better, or it might help him. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like, I don't know how many minutes him and Monty have played together. But I think just having more guards out there or more people that understand the importance of not getting heavy ISO or just movement and spacing has also helped Kyle. So whether you like it or not, I know some people get kind of on Finch because it seems like Finch is so pro Kyle, and during January that was a pretty tough stock to hold on to. Now it's clearly paid off again, but Kyle's going to play, significant minutes in a playoff series when they go to the bench. So him playing better is maybe one thing that you could kind of pin optimism to in terms of maybe this offense figuring itself out. Maybe Kyle closes a playoff game. I don't know, like they've been kind of experimenting with that too. So just having more guys out there that get it, I think are one way to help with what is a really, really bad clutch time offense right now.
Just looking up the Anderson and Morris numbers, they're like the best of the season. It's only 63 minutes, but it's a plus 21.9.
Oh, no way.
Net rating. And I mean, that kind of checks out the way I think about it more than the numbers, and why I think it can functionally sustain in a bigger sample is the way I think about it is it's Monte Morris instead of Shake Milton. And when you just like, they kind of, once the Anderson stuff really wasn't working and the shot was really bad at the beginning of the year, he just wasn't taking them and it was killing the space. It was killing so much of the offense. They started having Anderson play, like bring the ball up more and more.
Yep.
So it's like, it's the Ben Simmons, right? They kind of they're going to guard you if you have the ball at the top of the key because you're a threat to drive. But if you're in the corner, they're not, they're going to ignore you. And so if you kind of inverted a little bit more, now Anderson would do that, but it would be Shake Milton in the corner who was making like 20% of his threes, and they also weren't guarding him. So now you kind of picture the setup, right? When Anderson brings the ball down, and now in the right corner is Monte Morris, who's made 39% of his threes every single year of his career, rather than Shake Milton, who had a blip in his career three-point shooting where he hit 39% last year in Philadelphia. It's just a more reliable shooter that is surrounding Kyle Anderson in that group. And I think that makes a world of difference in the numbers, because it makes a world of difference in the way in which the Wolves are just being, guarded in general there. Kyle, let's grab our first break. English muffin time, baby. And then we'll get back to some bold predictions. Today's show is brought to you by Stone and Skillet English Muffins. You can go to stoneandskillet.com and use the promo code Dane for 20% off on those. They're also at Whole Foods. You've heard Kyle and I, maybe Kyle, I'll let you pump them a little bit, but they're my favorite English muffins. Great way to, kind of start the morning, something hearty. If you are like me, the type of person that actually needs to like eat breakfast in the morning, you get 6 grams of protein in these, and they're just good. I mean, we were talking to some of the players in the locker room in Portland about them, and they're like, "Yo, Stone and Skillet, yeah, I've had those."
There's a 7-minute conversation about Stone and Skillet between like you, me, Carl, Rudy, and a couple other people. So that's when I knew that they had kind of made it. But I mean, we've said this now, I think every week we've been doing these, but they're delicious. They're actually 6 grams of protein for people that actually are kind of looking for something to give them a little more of a boost there. And they're great morning, noon, or night. That's kind of my favorite thing is late night snack on the weekend. They're also very filling. So, and there's a ton, some are sold out right now, and I'm sure they'll restock, but there's a ton of also fun flavors. It's not just like generic original or wheat. There's, cinnamon raisin, stuffing muffin, orange cranberry. There's a lot of different flavors to try. So I highly, highly recommend checking these out. And like you said, using your code.
3 brothers out of Boston made these, and they're kind of moving them out west, and Minneapolis or Minnesota is one of their areas here too. So we're just trying to, put these on your radar, not that me and Kyle just like them. Like I'm just buying them at this point because I want to have English muffins at my house. So stoneskillet.com, promo code Dane when you buy some English muffins from them there. And then also quickly, Kyle, I just wanted to mention, the option of going to Falling Knife for the games while the Wolves are on the road here. They'll be showing the game Thursday night against the Pacers. And then Friday night against the Cavs. I always say, the weekends is when it kind of seems like it's most popping there and it's a fun environment to be there for. But also, like, there's other things going on at, like, if you're a person who wants to watch the Wolves games at home or you're there too, like, check out Falling Knife for happy hour. See, they have Trivia Mafia tonight, Wednesday night. I always feel like I want to go to trivia more often. You know what I'm saying? I never know where or when it is, though. Like,
this just came up the other night. I was talking to my neighbor Bobby, and I was like, we should go to more trivia. He's like, why? I was like, I don't know, it just seems like the cool thing to do. Like, find a cool brewery and just go and like hang out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Find more ways to get off my cell phone. You know what I mean?
We both need that. So as always, Falling Knife for the Wolves or otherwise, check that out in Northeast Minneapolis. All right, Kyle, let's keep moving on here. I could do some of my picks that did not age as well, but I think this is an interesting one to kind of talk about in the sense of all NBA. I had one of my, again, bold predictions, not hater predictions, was I said Ant won't be an all-star. And if I remember correctly, yeah, right. I think we talked about this. We talked about it in the sense of how deep the West was going to be this season, not only in terms of like having 10 playoff quality teams, as that's proven out to be true, but a lot of just high level guards. That I think my point more so was it was going to be tough for Ant to make it, but he's exceeded my expectations for this season, and kind of ended up when the voting came through being a no-brainer all-star and he deserved it. And now when I'm looking at, have you looked at like all NBA and kind of been like, okay, is Ant going to get it this season?
A little bit. I do kind of circle back again to, I liked when you and Chris did a pod right after the All-Star break and you're like, hey, this isn't the 50% mark. Like, we're not just halfway through the season.
Yeah.
We're much further than that. But then again, I woke up this morning, I was like, there are still 25% of the season. There's a lot that could kind of change. I mean, I don't think a month ago, Jokic was like the runaway favorite for MVP. And then watching the Nuggets last night, even though they lose, like, he seems, again, 1 month later. So I haven't really thought about it too much, but I know that based on what like guys like Shea are doing and Tatum and all this stuff, that it's going to be, second team, third team, if anything. So, and then, he's had some duds like he did the other night against Portland. So I don't know how that's going to affect it, but I would say, going just completely off the rails here, my immediate thought without looking at the chart you're putting on YouTube is that he's not going to make All-NBA.
So I think he is.
Okay. Based on, and you're going to get into numbers, this has nothing to do with record, right?
I mean, I think that's a factor there. I'm looking at the 65 game limit here. So on the screen, I just have like the shooting guards and point guards ranked by, estimated plus minus, which I think is a good way to put a list together. It's not a perfect order or anything. Like, Derek White's good. He's probably not the 5th best guard in the NBA this season.
Unless you're from Boston. He's the 3rd best guard.
Right. But I mean, the only two like all NBA locks, I think, over Ant are Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic, right? Like, you could say that Donovan Mitchell and Tyrese Halliburton, if they get the 65, would be ahead of him. But, Donovan Mitchell's out right now, and he's played 47 games. You see that in the far left column, 47 out of 61 games. So is that 21 more games that they have? Like, if he played in every game, which we know he's not going to, because he's literally out right now and won't even play against the Wolves on Friday, like, he could only get to 68. I think he might ultimately fall below that line. Tyrese Halliburton is back. He's played in 50 of their 63 games. So that's, if he played in every game the rest of the way, he'd get to 69. And again, the line is 65. It just seems likely that one of those two don't make it from a qualification standpoint, right? Just of the 65 game limit. And then I think, I don't know, like Steph, Booker, Brunson, like, even if you want to put all three of those in over Ant, if Mitchell and Halliburton are out, Ant still gets that sixth guard spot. I know it's just like, it's just like it's not positional, right, in this anymore. But I think they're still going to sort of be in that direction, right? Like, I would still assume they're going to put 5 guards on the two teams, even if it's not the 6 that it normally is. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how the voting sort of works out.
Yeah, no, I'm not prepared for this. I can't remember what the rules are. I always, whenever I think of All NBA now, it's like Zach Lowe versus Bill Simmons, whereas like Simmons is more of a traditionalist, and right. I think, or maybe he's the one that's like, I just want to put the best players on there. So yeah, there's 3 All NBA teams, right? I mean, that's how Carl got in the year that bumped up his supermax, was that he made 3rd team All NBA. Do I have that
that's
right?
How Rudy got it over Carl, which bumped up his.
Okay, that's what it was.
And Carl lost $36 million.
That's really interesting. The graphic you threw up is because I guess I had just forgotten about the 65 game thing. And yeah, some of those guys are kind of like Donovan Mitchell are kind of playing with fire in terms of having to play almost every game remaining of the season. And
even Luka's at only 54 games. Like, and he's been rolling that ankle pretty consistent. Like, there's a world where he doesn't get to the 65.
It's going to add a different wrinkle though to this season for the first time ever, where are you going to see guys like tough it out or play or do like weird start a game and then like the inverse of Ant, like start a game and then not play.
Remember when the Nets did that weird thing where like Bridges and all the guys played like a quarter or whatever, and then they came up. Yeah, I mean,
but it is. What's a bigger picture back to our predictions from October is that you didn't think he was going to make an All-Star. I saw in the moment why you didn't, because you were just like, look at the West, look at the guards. Right. And we also didn't have them back to the top of the show being like, yo, they're going to be first place in the West 75% through the season. So he deserved to be an All-Star. He probably deserves to be All-NBA, but it just comes back to my final lap of the track thing. Like, 20 games is 20 games.
Sure.
Like, let's cue this up even 24, 48 hours from now when he gets to go kind of head-to-head against Halliburton. Because Halliburton would be a guy that's in there that, is also well in the mix. I think that Shea and probably Luka are going to, if Luka plays enough games, are going to dominate first team. But you're right. I was wrong. He has a real chance to make All-NBA, and then that'll trigger a whole different conversation about how the financials work or probably don't work moving forward for this team. Yeah,
and I mean, and to the financials part, like, that's true. Tyrese Halliburton's in the same spot. Like, he gets the bump up in his max, same way as Ant does, same draft class, same clause in there as well. So,
do you think if anyone in Ant's camp is listening to this or so, like that, because we've talked about that all season, right? Like, hey man, you got like $45 million on the line extra just this year of like playing. So if you knew like, hey, there's a real chance you can get this. Like, if you run a little faster, figuratively and literally, thinking back to that Portland game, if you just run a little harder to finish this race off, you can make $45 million extra dollars. I wonder if that'll, if someone will get in his ear about that, and you'll see like an uptick in. Well, I mean, I know he knows, but it's like maybe you'll see a different, that February version of him, even on juice for the rest of the season, because there's a lot of incentives for him to really close this season out, not only for standings and he's not going to win MVP, but MVP votes and all this stuff, but also financially to just make way more money.
Well, and they're not playing anybody like the Blazers or the Grizzlies or the Spurs in these next games.
Right.
It
Yeah.
is. I think I would assume he'll be turned up a little bit more for the Halliburton matchup. The Cavs are no joke, and no Donovan Mitchell in that game, but that team's still good without
Really
Donovan
good. Yeah.
Mitchell. Like as an aside, I think even without Mitchell and Mobley like rolled his ankle last night when I was watching that game. I'm almost still think the Cavs are a harder matchup than the Pacers are in these two games, even without Mitchell and Mobley. But yeah, we will see on that. Let's grab another one of yours.
Well, this one was baked into my preseason philosophy that they would really try to manage Mike Conley's minutes, which again, pretty wrong on that. And as Jace has done Conley Corner, and Mike Conley's probably the number one person you guys talk to at practices and shoot rounds and post and pregame. Mike Conley wants to play, which I have no complaint about because, that Portland game, for example, I thought you and Jace did a good job of saying that's a perfect game for Mike to not play. But they probably don't win that game if Mike doesn't play. So
Sure.
if you're trying to chew up these wins and establish a culture and all this stuff, yeah, if Mike rolls his ankle in that game, there's going to be a lot of hindsight of like, why did you play the 36-year-old? I keep saying he's 38, my bad. 36-year-old point guard in a game that you didn't need him, but they did need him. So to circle all that back to Nickeil, I just thought Nickeil, coming off of a really strong finish to last season, would have an awesome 23-24. I was right about that, but he is, and I looked this up, he is exactly tied with Naz Reid at 23 minutes a game, 23.0. But Naz and Nickeil are tied for 6th in minutes on the team, with the top 5 being the 5 starters. So they've had a lot of injury luck, I think, this season compared to last season. Yeah, on the screen here, Nickeil has played one.
I did total minutes.
Okay, so Nickeil has played one less minute than Naz Reid. So there's a chance. I mean, if you're looking at it right now, the 5th most minutes played on a team, Jaden McDaniels, 1510, 1,510. Nickeil's at 1425. So if there is an injury or Mike has to miss a couple games, there's a chance that he does catch him. So this one's not dead yet. But I think it was just more baked in the idea that Nickeil, and this was in early October, would be an integral part of this team. And the reason that the team won't have many 6 man of the year votes is because I think they have 2 of the best 6 men in the league, and they're just going to cannibalize each other. So impressive that you can have, and I've heard this on other broadcasts when they talk about the Wolves. This happened on Monday because I had to listen to the Blazers broadcast. A lot of the narrative is now the Timberwolves have 7 starters, and that's the case right now with Naz Reid and Nickeil.
I think I'm interested to see how much Nickeil is in the all defensive team conversation at the end of the season, because it's not always like out of the question that a bench guys have made all defensive teams before. And I don't know. I mean, it's 10 guys. Maybe he won't get there, but statistically, again, if you look at the defensive estimated plus minus, he's up there actually ahead of Jaden and Rudy on this team. Again, it's not a perfect metric, but I think it does do a lot to signal that he's up there. Yeah, he's up there in that conversation for, I don't know. I think he should be in the conversation for all defensive second team at least. Obviously, that's where he's kind of made his bones, and that's why he gets the minutes every single night. There's a consistency to his minutes, even if it is a turnover game where he's not hitting his shots. Like Finch is still going to play him his minutes because he kind of knows what he's going to get from him defensively.
I don't think we've talked about this before, right? Like the most valuable or the most important player this season. This isn't an argument anymore, is it? Like it's been Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just kind of about how you define that. And I think value is often found in consistency. And Rudy, I would say, has been the most consistent star on the Wolves this season.
But he's not the most, I guess, impressive because I've seen Rudy Gobert win Defensive Player of the Year awards before, and he's just doing it again. But the Nickeil thing could be its own podcast in terms of, and he was kind of left for dead in his career, despite only at the time, I guess, being like 23 maybe when he was traded here. And I just think it's funny because, everyone constantly praises every move the Jazz make, but like the difference between him and Chris Dunn, who is, a kind of a reclamation project in Utah, was really nothing. They're both like lottery picks. They're both kind of left for dead, and they just kind of gave up on Nikhil. And for him to turn around, I mean, he is
Funny because they
playing
chose Chris Dunn for defense,
right. That's my point. Like they chose this
knowing
guy
he
who,
didn't have a jumper.
yep,
Like,
and
yeah.
and Nikhil, being he's never going to be 45% or anything crazy from three, but we always joke that he just seems to hit the most timely threes, and he's just such
No joke.
energetic force off the bench that Ant has taken a leap, and maybe Jaden's been a little disappointing, and Carl's regained his form, and Rudy's been the most valuable player in terms of just bringing it every night. Again, another veteran who just actually tried hard on Monday against the Blazers, but no one has been more impressive this season than Nikhil. And all of a sudden, for a team again that has financial question marks moving forward, Nikhil Alexander-Walker on what, $3.5 million? How much is he making next year?
He's making about 4.5 this year, about 4.5 next year. It's like, I mean,
that is
4.3 this year, 4.7 next year, I think.
That's one of the best contracts in the league for what he does. I mean, if Nikhil Alexander-Walker coming off the bench making $4.5 million is going to make an all defensive team, that's a pretty good feather in your cap for a transaction where he was indeed a throw-in in the Conley and Russell thing.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. And again, he's got a whole nother year with the Wolves at that number. Like, it's one of those guys where you're curious where the market will even be. And I feel like whenever I say, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Nikhil gets like the mid-level, when he's done. I mean it as a compliment, and people get angry. It's like, oh, then I can't keep him. And I'm like, no, I just like, he's to me a deserving sort of 10 12 million a year guy. Again, if it sustains over the course of another year, I think it'll be 26 when this deal ends. He's been a massive success. So that's
you just don't see that.
What I'm talking about.
You don't see that anymore, right? Like with the talent in the league is more talented than ever before. Mm-hmm. If you don't hit early, or if you are kind of written off as a bust, it just seems like it's over. Right. And for him to kind of do this and now, potentially be a $12, $14 million a year guy moving forward after a couple of years, it's pretty impressive. So as of today, he is not top 5 in minutes on this team. But Cam, put a bookmark in this. There's still a chance that I hit on this one.
There it is. My third bold prediction was terrible.
I forgot about this one.
Yeah, I said the Wolves will be better on offense than defense. I don't even know how to justify that after the fact. I think what I was thinking was, you think about the lean years. I mean, even like pre-Jimmy, like the Wolves were a walking top 10 offense with Cat, which is also just one of the bizarre things of the season, that they haven't been able to be, a top 10 offense this season, because there are, you do put Ant on top of Cat offensively. You do have the Mike and Rudy 2-man game on top of that offensively. Naz, like you said, making 41% of his threes, Nikhil making 38% of his. Like, it seems like a group that should have a top 10 offense. So I think, I guess what this really means is I was more expecting the defense to hold at around 8th, 9th, 10th, like it was last season. I did not see this jump from the team defensively, which, it'd be pretty impossible to have a better offense than defense this season. Why don't we do yours quickly?
Well, quick. Okay. This is a quick actual take or concept you can talk about based off, like you said, a prediction that missed pretty widely. But
yeah. And there's still time. I thought there was a whole quarter of the season left, Kyle.
Yeah, they would have to literally play the Washington Generals for 20 games. So they are, I think, right, the best defense in the league through 75% of the season, and their offense is not. Mm-hmm. And the season is so long and 82 games that there become chapters and trends and all this stuff. And the chapter right now is just how they have completely flipped from being one of the best, clutch time teams to one of the worst. And the question again, January was all about the offense. February, they started humming a little bit. And then now we're back to like late game stuff. So I'm just asking you, would you feel better today on March 6th being so wrong and this team being the best defense in the league but having a questionable offense? Or would you feel better about their playoff chances if they were the best offense in the league and their defense was a massive sieve?
Nope, I would take the former. I'd take what they are.
And I'm not trying to cope or be optimistic. I would too, right? Like I would rather.
And you could probably argue that neither are great. or
Sure,
like
for sure.
great,
Yeah.
like from a conference finals, NBA finals standpoint. And I know people can, point to a handful of other teams in the past, a lot of LeBron teams that weren't, good offensively and turned it on in the playoffs. And I'm really not ruling that out for the Wolves. I've been kind of hoping for the, turn of the calendar, January, the offense all of a sudden finds itself sort of thing, which has happened in previous seasons under Finch. We are in March right now. And again, they really haven't had an extended stretch at all of looking like a top 10 offense. So part of that is limiting in your mind, right? Big picture. And then you put that together with some of the late game offense stuff in particular. And you say that, but yeah, still at the end of the day, it's like, well, I don't know, like the second option you gave is the Pacers, basically, right? Or like maybe a little bit better of a defensive version of the Pacers. Like you're not picking that to win in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Even around, like really it needs to be, you at least got to be above average on both sides of the ball
For sure.
to confidently be picking, a team to roll deeper in the playoffs. But if I had to choose between the two, I would choose the number one defense and the number 17 offense rather than the inverse of that, I think.
They can't make a deep playoff run unless they figure out some of this offense stuff, especially late in games. And again, they have 20 games to maybe experiment. I know we're not going to talk about it today, but I would love for them to experiment by just maybe closing with not the same 5 they started with. Just throwing little wrinkles in there. Again, I know the 1 seed, the 2 seed, home court, and all that stuff is very important. I don't know how important it is or what the coaching staff thinks, but to me, it goes back to what was a really bad take, like in December and January, but like experimenting with Josh Minot or Leonard Miller. There does need to come a point where you just experiment in late games with like, how does Nikhil close? Like, does his energy and activity and his ability to space, or like, Naz Rudy shooting 41% from 3, how does that affect the late game offense? So I'm with you. Neither is great, but I do feel a little more confident knowing that through 75% of the season, the Wolves defense has been basically tops the whole time. Sure. And that just seems to translate a little more into April and May, whereas I think the way I understand basketball, that you can do enough to make the offense kind of like inject it with little things to help it out. I don't think you can do that on defense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Last but not least, this one was easy. This was a free square on Prize Picks. The Wolves will win 7 straight games for the first time since 2004. Obviously, 03-04 is the high watermark for this franchise. They haven't basically been good in 20 years. And I don't have the schedule. I think I have the schedule up. I think they hit a 7-game winning streak in like the first 15 games of the season. Right. So that was an easy one for me to dance on. But it is just kind of ties into, I've enjoyed this season so far because of all the records they've broken or old embarrassing teams that they've kind of surpassed early in the year with a win total. I mean, again, the other day they just hit 42 wins, which was last year's mark, and that was 42 wins in February. So 7 straight games for the first time since 04 is, I think, a pretty noteworthy thing because this team just doesn't really ever string together good weeks, and they've had a couple good weeks. And yeah, I don't know. I basically kind of went 1-1-1 so far, but I need Nikhil to play like 48 minutes for a week, and then I'll be winning this challenge.
A nasty bold prediction would have been to say they'd never lose more than 2 games in a row. That's still
since
like
April of 2023.
Yeah, that's still a real feather in this team's cap in terms of,
it would have been cool had they have played the Pacers on Monday, right? Just like to see like, okay, you drop a game against the Kings that you probably should have won, even with Ant leaving. You drop a game against the Clippers at home that I think definitely should have won. And then how do you respond to that? We've never lost 3 in a row all season to a good team or a solid team. The Blazers game was like a free victory, but we talk a lot about inexperience and youth, and I've kind of gotten away from the youth thing, but I also think inexperience is real with this team and maybe immaturity, but there's some level of maturity despite what each person might bring to the table. There's some level of maturity as a collective that this team, to coin your phrase, never fully lets go of the rope and slips into like 10 straight days of bad basketball.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I think the longest losing streak of the season being 2 games is probably more impressive than the longest winning streak being 7. But both are signs of a team that when they get punched in the mouth probably respond a little quicker than we're typically used to seeing over the last 20 years.
Kyle, let's grab another quick break and then come back. Let's do a little bit of the ownership, maybe look ahead to Cleveland and Indiana a little bit. All right, we are back with Kyle Teige. And Kyle, I've been, meaning to get to this and touch on it since sort of, I guess, a week ago, end of February, the sort of Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez payment, what's going on here situation, resurfaced. And we haven't talked about that much in the recent months. So I think it's worth touching on and just laying out the details as I understand them. And then we can kind of also touch on the cloud of mystery that sort of surrounds all of this as well. I think some of the details have been missed in this that have thrown off the scent, but at the same time, it's been a bizarre transition. Nobody can deny that, and probably will continue to do so. But just if I could just rattle off some stuff here really quick, and then we can kind of go back and forth on it. Again, as I understand it, or was told, there was at the end of December a call option that was put in there to purchase portions of this team for the third and final payment, right? And they activated that call option that made it due 90 days out, a 90-day call option, which is March 27th. So that's the technical due date. There were options within there to add a 30-day call, a 60-day call, to also have made payments, which they did not opt to do. And the 60-day one led to confusion, and Glenn certainly didn't help that and clearing it up or understanding it. And, good on Doogie for interviewing him, going straight to the source there. But I think there was some confusion that they missed a payment there when in reality it needs to be paid on March 27th, which is the 90-day call option. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen for sure. I mean, no one does, right? They need to, the payment needs to be made. And I don't think they've inspired a ton of confidence, like 100% confidence that it is in fact going to happen. But that is the time in which it is quote unquote due. But there's another factor in here as well, is that they have not yet been approved by the league's board of governors to be the new owners. That doesn't mean that like they're probably not going to, but that is another thing that needs to happen in the overall transition, is the payment and the approval by the league. And the league board of governors meets in mid-April. So I say that all to mean like a heads up that when March 27th, the due date of the 90-day call option for their final payment comes, it can come and go without maybe the clarity that we're hoping for, because that board of governors meeting is also happening. I think it's April 10th, say call it mid-April there. And the league has to approve that as well. So there's kind of the two prongs going here. And again, they got to make the payment, but March 27th comes and goes and there isn't a clarity. I still don't think we're at the freak out point of this and start talking to other owners or anything like that. It could just be that give 2 more weeks, the league approves it at that point there too. So I would say like end of the regular season, let's look at where things are and reassess at that time. I think that's probably the most appropriate time to do so. Again, this is not me saying I feel in full confidence that this will all be taken care of. But there is more time in which, within the restrictions that were laid out years ago, and again, a very bizarre process, to still be quote unquote on time with the payment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the reporting on both sides, which has been a lot of, either Darren Wolfson or John Krasinski, is that there is a little bit of like he said, they said, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, and they would be probably upfront with this, but who each person's source is. Like Doogie is as close to Glenn Taylor, and like you said, can go directly to the source and ask him questions. And then like you said, Glenn can't maybe get out of his own way sometimes when he's like, oh, I haven't even heard from Mark and Alex in 2 months. It's like, well, they're sitting courtside, so you could wave at him and like maybe go talk to him if you wanted.
Yeah, that part doesn't make sense. I see them interact all the time at Target Center. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's not that there's, again, I don't know what the cloud of mystery around all of this is. I just gave you guys whatever information I do have, but there's for sure a bizarre element to all this. I wonder though if the bizarreness was set up to be this way 3 years ago when they set the initial deal and, you know, made lasagna or burgers or whatever and signed the manila sheet of paper, you know, like this was always going to have a bizarre nature to it. And they might just be kind of reaping the seeds that they sowed from that that comes in confusion.
You've been hanging out with Britt a lot. That was really deep. Yeah, it's kind of like the Ant thing on Monday, right, against the Blazers. There's a lot of reasons, basketball and non-basketball, you can describe that would show why Ant was late for tip-off or played poorly or whatever. And you can believe whatever you want to believe, but at the end of the day, it was just a weird performance. And it's like no other team, since Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry agreed to purchase this team from Glenn, you've seen, I think, 3 other teams get sold. The Suns, the Mavericks, and the Hornets. Yeah. And they all happened overnight. Right? And then the new ownership came in and made some changes, and now they're cooking again. This has been the most unique sports sale or pro sports team sale that I can think of. Even like the Sterling thing was kind of like quick, and even though it was messy, it was quick. It's just weird. And then there is, and we joke about it all the time, and sometimes we push back on it, but there is real Timberwolves arthritis here of, it's weird, it's the Timberwolves, and now things are really normal, and this organization seems really well run. Yeah, they have all 7 of their best players signed through next season, all this stuff. And if you're a fan, you can be like, okay, I hear what Doogie says, that makes sense. I saw what John wrote, that makes sense. I heard what Dane just said, that makes sense. But there's still scar tissue of, for no better way to say, don't fuck this up, because you just said the Board of Governors meeting is probably April 10th, right? April 10th, the Wolves play the Nuggets on ESPN. And it would be so Timberwolves for that sale to not get approved. You have 2 more home games, and then you go into a playoff series with 4 empty courtside seats because Mark and Alex aren't let into the building. That's a stretch, but I'm just saying, it would be very Timberwolves to be game 80 and all of a sudden this 24-month layaway plan, I know people don't like that, but this 24-month payment plan or purchase plan is nuked, especially when you're actually all set up.
I don't think any of that is going to happen.
Sure,
I know, and I'm not even pushing back on you, but I understand why that perception is out there, Timberwolves arthritis or not, because it's been such a bizarre process that looks nothing like any of the other ownership transitions that we've seen in the past 3 years, or I think, decade plus. This is bizarre. It started bizarre. It started in COVID. Glenn was using a consulting firm to do the sale at one point, and things weren't coming in, and then he took it back over. With other partners, but took it over more internally and went out more so on his own to find someone and found Mark and Alex. It's just been choppy. The whole thing has been choppy, and to that end, you kind of, you start a wave, and here we are 3 years later, right before, time is to wrap up. I understand the cloud. I think about it often. But I don't think that should be the presumption of how this plays out. Not that I know that's not what you were saying, but some other people might be nodding along with you. That's totally going to happen April 10th against the Nuggets or whatever. And it could, I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. And as a reporter, that's been part of the frustration, is hearing a whole bunch of different things. And then my recourse has been to try to largely stay away from it because I don't know or understand. These are the things I understand.
Well, Alex Rodriguez was out here for that first Portland game, and we got to, or I talked to someone part of the corp that I'm kind of friends with, and they continued to put out this energy of, like you're saying, we're on track. Like everything is fine. But that's probably what you would say, right? To people like me. So I'm not concerned. I'm just kind of over it. And I
Yep.
also, but I do know, because this isn't Timberwolves specific. This is any team. Hell, this is any organization. This is the company I work at in Portland. The best ownership is, or the best CEO, it's just when they're out of sight, out of mind. So the fact that this is not resolved and we're on the final lap of this 1 mile track and now we're getting two sides of the story, it's just like they don't need any of that. This has been the most, this isn't even a take. This has been the most drama-free season the Minnesota Timberwolves have had in 20 years, and largely because they're winning, but that winning is influenced by big game hunting with Tim Conley, big game hunting with Rudy Gobert, signing all these guys, being like, we're okay being a fat financial team moving forward.
And who's making all those calls? Mark and Alex, Rudy, Conley, right? The continuing to build a roster that's going to be expensive. Not that Glenn isn't tied to it, but a lot of the big things that we're going to extend past the time of Glenn's stewardship. They've been intimately, involved in there. And that again makes it all weird. It's like, okay, you are the owner, but you haven't, the payment plan isn't lining up with the decision-making plan there. And that's been, I think just an unfortunate thing for Wolves fans to have to track, particularly for Wolves fans who have been here since 89 or since KG and that time, where it's like every time something has felt weird, it's gone terrible, and what Wolves fans I think need is the proof of something weird is going on here. Can we just handle it and have it not be terrible? That's what people are looking for. And we don't know yet. I just think the end result of this, more likely than not, from the sense I get, which I could be wrong about, is this is going to play out normal.
Good. Close out the game, right? No, I mean, like I really think, and this is rare,
ball movement, body movement, spacing to the corner, get Glenn
get
over
Mark
there
in the
ready
post.
To spot up.
No, I mean, really, it's rare if you pull yourself
put two
out
on the ball on A-Rod, swing it.
Yeah, just get some extra
swing
juice
it
on
to
the
Ethan
court.
Casson,
If this team, this new ownership group led by Mark and Alex, and obviously minority partners, but Mark and Alex have had their hand in so many things on the court, what you just said, so many more things off the court, which I know you see every day. You kind of show up to the office or whatever. It's rare that an ownership group comes in and doesn't have that new owner syndrome, and like they hit on almost everything. Like, I don't think you should like your owners in pro sports, because typically they're just live a different lifestyle than you. They do a lot of things you wouldn't agree with. Mark and Alex, in my opinion, have not missed through the first 42 minutes, 43 minutes of this layaway plan, this game. But much like the team that they own now, or are going to own, be better, like close the game, right? Just get this so there's no drama, there's no issues, because to your point, it was Mark and Alex that got Tim Conley, and it was them that got Rudy Gobert and got Mike Conley. But like 6 months from now, if this all does finish as seamlessly as we would hope, they are then on the hook for big financial decisions. So if they built all this up, but it still technically says Glenn Taylor on all the checks, like, you've done so much to build this pyramid. Get the final little triangle on top, right? Like, get it through, have confidence in the fan base, confidence in the organization, that there's going to be no hiccups, that we're going to have a real deep playoff run. And then whatever happens in the playoffs will determine how we modify or run this roster back. So I'm not concerned.
Yeah, first things first. Get the sale processed, and then a next step is future finances, talking about the luxury tax, setting your thing there. Because I've said it all along. It there should be the expectation that they pay the luxury tax, which I'm confident they will. There's just levels to that, right? Are you paying a $12 million luxury tax bill? You paying a $45 million luxury tax bill? You paying a $112 million luxury tax bill? Like, we don't, know any of that stuff. And we need to get these first things set in place first, and then they can make their decision on that, which I think, you give some grace to, of like, it doesn't need to be a $200 million tax bill, right? Like, some stability and then there can be some understanding going forward and trust. I think that's what's kind of lacking here, and that goes back to the arthritis.
It's like so many other things though too, right? And the reason that people are maybe concerned, or like, why is this still so weird? It would be really easy for just at a home game that Mark, Alex, and Glenn are all at to just, quickly just do a scrum. And it's like, hey, and put all their arms around one another and throw Becky Taylor in there and just be like, we're good. We're going to figure this out. But the reason that no matter what is being told behind the scenes or to one reporter or to another, they're not doing that. And like you said, some of the things that each side have said have been a little scratch your head. Like the Glenn Taylor stuff of, I haven't talked to them in months. It's like, well, I just saw you talking to them. So like, what is some of the just weirdness? And when you have weirdness with an organization that has been very properly mismanaged for so many years and has been weird, and Josh Okogie's cramping, actually his leg's going to get amputated, just weird messaging coming out, just land the plane. Because this is the first time in 20 years that there's no drama, there's no chaos, and to just insert that down the stretch run would be really, really a bummer, especially to fans that, again, the price of tickets have not gone down.
Invested. Fans are invested.
Right. The fans are more invested in this than ever before. You're getting them out there for all these, unique merchandise things, and the ticket price is going up, all stuff. Like, they deserve better than what this is playing out like. And okay, we'll give them the rest of the month. We'll give them till April 10th on the ESPN game. But if this all kind of plays out, I hope on April 10th, whoever's calling the game for ESPN, JJ Redick is like, and the Wolves now belong to Mark and Alex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the hope. I have no promises of that. I was just told mid-April there's a Board of Governors thing that probably is public. I probably should have looked that out, but that will come. You'll see the little Shams tweets about it. Oh, they're reconsidering what a rule change in the G League, and they're doing this and that, and then hopefully one of those things that have been leaked to the national media that a bullet point is that the Wolves sale is complete in its transition from Glenn Taylor to Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez. But these are things that happen outside of us, and we don't like I can't. We could request Kyle Anderson to talk to after the game as a media member to talk about the game. You can't request Glenn Taylor on the record to talk about all of this stuff. I think when the time comes, though, once the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, whatever, we'll have that time to do those interviews, and there will be more clarity on it. I just hope, and I think the fan base deserves to have that clarity here around this window, the 90-day call window, which those of us who have been listening while you've been telling us and saying like, no, this is the time. Okay, let's get some clarity around the time that you said we would get the clarity, and I think that is coming in about, was it today, March 6th? Yeah.
Don't ask the fans to pay even more money, which I know everything in life is getting more expensive. $5 footlongs are $14 now, but don't ask them to pay more money for tickets moving forward and give, if you don't know what you're paying for, right? Like, I'm expecting that this ownership thing lands and that they become a team that is aggressive and they will pay a luxury tax in the second apron and stuff. But really, this is the longest this fan base has gone without the football being pulled out, right? Kind of Charlie Brown stuff. And it's the happiest I think the fan base has been, and they're more bought in than ever before. It's a basketball city right now, partly with the timing, but partly because this is the best franchise right now being run in the city. So don't let them down. Just land this weird, awkward plane. And if it does land, or they do close out the game, or whatever analogy you want to use, I think fans should feel confident in this new ownership group, because up until now, they're like Naz Reid from 3. Like, they haven't really missed.
I think that's a good place to wrap up today. Next episode's coming this week from me. Britt and I are going to both be in Indiana and Cleveland. We're going to try and do some of those like immediate, maybe a little bit shorter than a normal Brit Pod episodes after both the Indiana and we got to limit his beer intake. That's that made the Orlando one go a little long. But we'll talk about the Indiana game and the Cleveland game. I think those are going to be two really interesting games, two good teams that we don't get to see the Wolves play very often. The other time they played Indiana had one of those terrible flew in on the back end of a back-to-back day of that sort of thing. Like Halliburton didn't play in that game. It'd be interesting to see them play against another real heavy pace team like the Kings. And then, the Cavs are just a good team. Like I was watching them play last night. They bizarrely, I mean, it's not even just like the Mobley and Allen thing. You start like looking around at the rest of that roster. You're like, oh, George Niang is Kyle Anderson, like Dean Wade, who was huge last night. Maybe wouldn't have compared him to Naz Reid, but he would look like Naz Reid in the fourth quarter last night. I mean, they're weirdly similar to the Wolves.
I have Twitter notifications on for you for some crazy reason because I'm a sicko, and I just get this alert on my phone that's like, is Dean Wade the Cavs' Naz Reid? And I was like, I don't even know what this means.
Did you see like
yeah, he was great last night. I was Suns Nuggets was also really good. I texted you if you watched it, you were sleeping, but it around the league right now too, it's fun, right? I know we're kind of wrapping this up, but it's fun that if the Wolves and their lack of late game stuff is starting to really bug you, it really is a palate cleanser to just go catch a couple other teams. Not to be like, hey, everyone is having issues, but like last night you saw, a Nuggets team that was really trying to win, and the Suns, a roster. I don't really worry about the Suns, but there's no one better in the league right now that just knows their spots and can close out than Kevin Durant. And like that's one thing I don't think the Wolves have is I don't think Ant knows his spots. I don't think Carl knows his spots.
They got a bad clutch rating too. The Suns.
Yeah, their fourth quarter. I mean, I think they're one of the best teams, first, second, third, and overtime. But the fourth quarter is where they really fall apart. I mean, the Suns and Wolves could play a playoff series where neither team scores in the fourth. And it's all defense. But yeah, it's interesting now because you're starting to get a glimpse of, they play the Lakers, they play the Clippers, they get a couple more games against the Nuggets. You're starting to see not only in a one-game sample size, but what will each coaching staff show, right? Like how much will you show in the regular season versus, and how much data can you get in terms of this is what we would do to stop Harden and stuff. So the final stretch of 20 games for all teams is going to be really interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of influx, right, in the standings. There's kind of segments and tiers, but, can the Lakers and Warriors get out of the play-in? Can any team catch the Thunder or the Wolves or the Nuggets for one of those top three seeds? It's going to be a really, really fun last, couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's totally even if you're not watching basketball that night, you're like looking at, okay, do the Clippers play? Like, who do they play? Can this be a loss? Kind of because it's tight. It's going to be tight in the West this whole final chapter. And just as like a fan of the game, it's fun to tune into every night. He's Kyle Teige. You're already following him on Twitter at Kyle Teige. You can listen to more of him on Flagrant Howls over at Score North with Phil Mackey. And we'll have Kyle back sometime next week. Again, me and Britt for the rest of the week this week. And then LA, I think we'll talk to Chris after one of those games and kind of go from there. Again, follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Teige. You can, as we kind of pulled up on the screen, our Instagram, we got different clips and stuff after most days, clips from the podcast, that sort of thing. That's at DaneMooreNBA _ podcast. I think we're going to try and do some more Instagram, TikTok sort of stuff here at the end of the season. So help us out. Follow us over there. I think particularly once Kyle gets back in town and for the playoffs and stuff like that too, we'll do a little bit more like day of content through Instagram and TikTok there too. So wanted to plug that until Thursday night with Britt. So you probably listen to that on Friday morning or on Friday. He's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dancing like